This is a symbol of the major world religions, all woven together. And by the way, on the inside, it says Reverend Marcia. And then this is a symbol for the science of mind, which represents the creative process constantly going on from the formless into the formless, in and out of creation constantly going on. So I'll take it off because it's tugging on my microphone. That was fun. You learn something every day. So I'm going to put that there. But I wanted to share with you a little bit. Anybody notice some posts on Facebook about the Parliament of World Religions?
Yes.
Okay. So it's happening right now. And I wanted to share just a little bit about that with you, which means that I'm going to wear my glasses because you can see the print is really small. It's taking place this year in Salt Lake City, Utah, and it's been going, it's from the 15th through the 19th, so it finishes tomorrow, and there are a couple things I want to tell you about it. The Parliament is the largest summit of interfaith activists around the globe, which provides listening, learning, and sharing opportunities, as Imam Malik Mujahid, I try, chair of the Parliament Board of Trustees. The Imam further states that at this juncture in human history, when hate, fear, and anger are rising in America and across the globe, it is important that faith communities rise with loving, caring relationships, even if we do not agree on some issues. So there are global faith leaders who are gathering together on this amazing occasion. This is the first time in 22 years that this event has taken place in the United States. I had a student back in 2004, I think, who took herself to the Parliament of World Religions when it was in Barcelona. So anyway, I want to read you a little something from Dr. Arun Gandhi, grandson of Mohandas Gandhi and a Parliament trustee. He says, recalling of the vision of his grandfather, a friendly study, Gandhi believes, of all of the scriptures is the sacred duty of every individual. I'm quoting from an article, so I will continue. He made the friendly study and found that none of the religions of the world had the whole truth. The truth can only be realized when one has an open mind and a willingness to learn from all different religions, the bits of truth they have. This essentially is what the Parliament is encouraging on a mass scale. So if you Google this and you look up the Parliament of World Religions, and you'll find stuff. People are Facebooking and tweeting. Our community spiritual leader, Dr. Ken Gordon, spoke there a couple days ago. There are people from all New Thought, Science of Mind, Unity, and other churches, as well as every other. I think there are 50 world religions, and I don't know how many countries. It's all written on there. But
Oprah's broadcasting on her channel.
Okay, and so she has something also starting called Believe. So there's so much going on. But what I wanted to share with you is that the topic today is called Working Together. And I would add that the idea of working together is an inside job. So if we look at this concept of working together, and we just refer to that one example of what these people of all different faith paths are doing by becoming willing and making the choice to get together even though they don't agree on everything, to work together to effect change in the world. Each of those people recognizes in some way that it's an inside job. Because the inside job is making the choice to be that person who is willing, who goes and participates in something like that. And not just for show, but to be willing to do something. And so this is an amazing, if you just get a few snippets of what is taking place, you'll be blown away. Okay. So coming back to our being here, we had our message a couple of weeks ago about honoring all paths. And we're actually participating in AGNT's season for interfaith and intercultural celebration all the way through December. And so we take a moment to look at what working together means for us right now. Those of you who know me know that I have a little bit of a fascination with fiction having to do with mysteries and so on. And lately we've been watching some that have to do with white-collar crime. So they're nice and clean. You know, hardly anybody gets hurt, but things get stolen and found and put back, right? Okay, so it's interesting to realize that this concept of an inside job really refers to a type of heist or theft, if you will, that requires the cooperation of somebody on the inside in order to pull it off. So isn't it interesting if you think that working together is the thing that we want to get, right? And it's got to be an inside job. So we've decided, well, we've got to have someone on the inside in order to pull it off. Okay, all right, so we know that much. And then we discover that the inside job, the person on the inside, is something that is required of us, that we are that person. And that is the turning point in the classic hero's journey of realizing that in order to get the thing and accomplish the outcome that is desired, the protagonist is going to have to accomplish something that they don't believe that they can do, that they don't necessarily think they're capable of. So let's back up a minute. We're saying that working together is this thing that we want to get. We're saying that it's an inside job, and we just realized that the person on the inside required to pull it off is us. Well, let's back up and think about this for a moment. What is so desirable about working together? What makes it a prize, a treasure? What makes it worth going after? What makes it a holy grail, if you will? Well, it might sound a little trite, but the fact is that working together accomplishes what working alone cannot do. So that makes it a treasure. That makes it a prize. That makes it something worth going after. And you know, actually, in our natural state, in our inherent state, we are very familiar with working together and cooperating. Most likely, unless the conditions of our gestation and birth were and early childhood were really very traumatic, we come in to this life with a natural ability, not just an ability, but a desire, an urge to trust and to cooperate and to work together. And of course, we may have learned between that time and this some idea that maybe it's not always a good thing to trust. And so perhaps we should do a little bit more alone, be safer that way. We avoid conflict. Maybe we avoid danger. Maybe we just avoid discomfort. And maybe, too, we've learned along the way from that time to this that collaboration isn't all it's cracked up to be. Oh, because what happens? Oh, because people argue. They disagree. It's uncomfortable. It can even be unsafe. Everything from feeling slighted to feeling in danger. So once again, perhaps between that time and this, you, like me, have learned to do more by yourself, on your own. Well, guess what happens? Less happens. Less happens because we can access more possibility working together. And every time we give up a little bit of that for our own safety or comfort or whatever the reasons may be that we have taken on, we give up a little more of what is possible. And as you can imagine, over time, that's quite a lot. How many of us, grown-ups, in our 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s are really good at playing? Don't raise your hands. Okay. How many of us remember how to be real silly and spontaneous and dream big dreams like we were talking about last week? Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, that's good. They're intact. This is good. But think about it. So what we're saying is we are making a case for why it's worth going through all this trouble to get this prize called working together. And why it is so worth it that we're willing to look at what comes up for us when we realize we're it. That at our point in this game, in this organization called life, in this, our spot in the big picture, we're the only one who can bring that prize out into the open. We're the only one with working knowledge of how that can be done from where we sit. So we're saying, okay, it's definitely worthwhile. I recognize that I have to be the inside man or woman in this little cosmic heist. And I realize that actually there's a beautiful spiritual metaphor here. Because aren't we told that everything is an inside job? So we hang on to that. We remember that all good things start from within. And then we come face to face with who we have come to think that we are versus who we truly are. With the damped down version of who we are that we have taken on versus the magnificent, limitless one that we were born with. And we have to choose. This is always the story. This is always the story. We have to come face to face with those false ideas that we have taken on about ourselves and say, you can't do that. You're not a game changer. You don't make waves. You don't rock boats. You don't, tip the apple cart. You don't stand up in the canoe. You're not that kind of person. What if you really are? What if you really are? So imagine then that we've said that this thing called working together is worth going after. We realize it's an inside job. We realize that it's our job from where we're sitting in our part of life and the world. And we realize that we're going to have to do something in order to fulfill that role. We're going to have to let go of all of the ways that we have thought of ourselves and other people in the world and the infinite in other ways, in limiting ways. Ways that we have learned not to trust. Ways that we have learned not to work together. Ways that we have learned to just get through life, taking minimal risks, doing everything the same way every day. We've been eating the same thing for breakfast for years, and we decided to break this cycle. Oh my God, and to have something different. Wow. So, whatever those evidences are for you of doing the same thing safely and comfortably, can you imagine that maybe the way to take on this role, to bring out the prize, to pull off the inside job, and to get this treasure of working together so that more of what is possible can happen, you just might have to offend your ego a little bit and do things differently. And you might have to upset a few people who really like you just the way you are. And start being spontaneous and impulsive and thinking outside the box and drawing outside the lines and doing things you haven't done in ages that perhaps a few people were so relieved you stopped talking about long ago. Right? It's worth it, though. It's worth it. Why is it worth it? It's worth it because for every one of us, we live in a household. There may be other human beings there. There may be other four-legged beings there. I would venture to guess that there's probably somebody living next door to you on either side, perhaps even below, and perhaps even above. There are people that we each encounter in our lives every day. Can you imagine if you just said, I'm going to take on this inside job of bringing into vision, into visibility, into common everyday experiences, this idea of working together. And I'm going to willingly let go of old ideas that sort of trumped my natural, spirit-given tendency to trust, to venture, to dream, to envision, to imagine, and to act on it. And I'm going to reach out to other people where previously I might have thought, you don't even have those encounters when you're shopping, doing errands, moving around your neighborhood in your perhaps very typical pattern, and you meet other people that you kind of sort of know, and you may or may not remember their name. You know the two options in Publix. One is to dart down another aisle, and the other is to walk right up and say, I forgot your name, but I'm so, and I didn't, Carol. I'm so happy to see you. I had an experience like that yesterday. My mind went, oh, there she is. I know who that lady is. I remember her name. She probably doesn't remember mine because I'm one of a gazillion people who go to the gym that she's the manager of. But I remembered it, and I walked right up and I said, hi. And I wished her a happy day. It's a little thing. But I moved toward her, and we had an experience of community that made us both smile, and then we wished each other well, and then disappeared into Publix. Can you imagine if we just did that? I'm not talking about necessarily going out and starting some brand new organization or a great campaign. But what if the great campaign was just a subtle choice and these subtle actions to move towards one another in greater acts of trust, in greater acts of cooperation and collaboration? What difference would that make? I think it might make a lot. I bet you it would make difference in people's moods. It would probably lift people out of depression. It might just make them happier than they already were. That would have a positive impact on their health. And probably would positively impact whatever they were doing next. It might increase their level of success, harmony in their relationships, accomplishment in their work. Who knows? Because each time every one of us is in that place of our natural vibration, stripped of all of the limiting ideas that we've taken on since we were children, great things happen. They happen for us individually, and they happen for us collectively. Now, you may have some great vision that is pulling you that's even bigger than that. And whether that's the case or it isn't, here's the deal about crossing that line. Bob Proctor calls it a terror barrier. And I know that Mary Morrissey mentioned it last week in our Prosperity Plus class, crossing the terror barrier. That's the moment when you take that darn leap. That's the moment where you have to go and take that step even though you can't see where your foot is going to land. That is the moment where you must go without guarantees. And yet the vision of what you can accomplish, what is possible, is always what makes it worth it and pulls you beyond that thing. That's what provides this idea that there's probably a net, or I'll probably grow wings on the way down, or I'm probably going to land on my feet. And it takes over. And it makes you go ahead and do crazy things that turn out wonderfully. So I want you to think today about what that means for you in your life, in this part of the world that you occupy right now. What does working together mean to you? This inside job of bringing that out into the open, into the world, in the part that you tend to cover right now. What does that look like? And what kind of possibility do you imagine that it accesses and realizes more than if you didn't? What is it? And ask yourself, am I willing to take the leap, to make that step without guarantees? Am I willing to be pulled and guided by this crazy vision and go ahead and do that thing? Because I believe that that's what we're ready for. And I feel that I know that doing that will change the world. So think about what that is for you. And imagine that in so doing, you will up-level the collective. You will shift consciousness around you just a little bit. You will open doors, and you will become that person who is an inspiring example for others of what is possible. And together, there's no limit to what we can do.